Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Smarten Up Show, Biblical Education Principles, where we discuss all things pertaining to education and parenting.
Yes, because they're really one and the same. Parenting is educating. Educating is parenting.
Yes, it is. My name is Darryl Weinberg, and this is my wife, Milena, and we are the founders of School Pods Canada, a organization that has been established to help children get the education that they deserve and to give parents a voice in their children's education. It's hot up there today, huh?
Yes, it is hot, and the kids are probably just kind of melting and having a bunch of freezies, and so. But summer's good.
Summer's good. We don't complain here up in the North Country when we have hot weather, because soon it will be a fleeting memory.
Yes, we have long winter, so we enjoy the hot days of summer.
Yes.
And it's a good time to be talking about education.
Well, we, June arrives and kids are off and people start getting into summer mode and vacation mode, but before you know it, you're going to start planning on getting back to school. And what does the song say? It's the most wonderful time of the year, I think it was.
It's a commercial. Our son's actually already seeing ads here and there about back to school, and he's asking why are they doing this?
The torture is very difficult. So we have some things that we need to talk about tonight, and we're going to start off with a very sad story that just this past week, I think it was, or very recently. This is from the organization Pay for PAF, which is Parents as First Educators. And it says, wokeness has sadly claimed another victim. Former Toronto District School Board Principal Richard Bilczko has been bullied to death for his courageous stance against the Toronto District School Board's diversity, equity, and inclusion mantra. Bilczko had spent the past couple of years contesting the ideology that held the school board in its jaws, even going so far as to take the board to court for harassment over his treatment by a presenter during a diversity training session, a battle which took an ever-increasing toll on his mental health. A statement released by Bilczko's family through his lawyer, Lisa Bildy, suggests that the relentless bullying from this employer led to his death. She quotes, "Unfortunately, the stress and effects of these incidents continue to plague Bilczko. Yes. Last week, he succumbed to this distress," read a statement by the family released Thursday by his lawyer, Lisa Bildy. His family and his friends have been left reeling and wish they could have had the chance to convince him that he was loved, respected, and needed here. So the story goes that at the diversity training session for school administrators, so keeping in mind, this isn't just the teacher, this is a school principal.
Yes, so the principals get education first about what the board is going to bring in. And so because they're then supposed to bring this new idea or whatever the school board wants to do to the school and ensure that all the teachers are adhering. So so this principal had gone to one of those.
So at the diversity training session for school administrators he attended 2 years ago, he drew the ire of the speaker for the Kojo Institute, Kiki Ojo-Thompson, for questioning the statement that Canada was a more racist place than the United States. Bilczko responded that history didn't support Ojo-Thompson's claims. The presenter concluded the discussion by instructing the class that, get this, here's what she said: "Your job in this work as white people is to believe, not to question claims of racism." Throughout the two-day session, Kojo Institute presenters repeatedly referred to Bilczko's views as white supremacy. After the session concluded, his mental health began to spiral out of control, and he had to take a leave of absence from work. After Biltzko returned to work, the TDSB refused to return him to the role he had prior to his leave. It also revoked a future work contract, and it retracted an invitation to attend a graduation ceremony. When his professional association asked the board to investigate the mockery sustained by Biltzko, it refused, so he took it into his own hands to defend his reputation and launched a case against the board in April of 2023. As reported, the board eventually filed a claim against the Kojo Institute for negligence and breach of contract, asking for damages in the amount for which they would be liable in the case of a win by Biltzko. And as of early July, the board claimed it planned to withdraw the suit, according to the reporter. Biltzko was exonerated by a workplace safety and insurance board investigation into the incident. The WSIB concluded that presenter Ojo Thompson's actions had risen to the level of harassment and bullying. But Biltzko found that his bosses at the TDSB lined up on Ojo Thompson's side. And according to Jonathan Case Tribute to Richard in Quillette, and in recent weeks, according to friends and family, he was concerned about more backlash from his lawsuit.
So it's just,
Wow.
even if he kept on going, he knew that he was going to continue receiving backlash. So he knew that his career with the board was done, and he knew that what was done to him was unjust. And so that leaves, and that's a principal, that's an administrator in a position where he feels powerless, and he feels that he cannot express a view or cannot, I guess, debate the truthfulness and the accuracy of what was presented at that presentation. And I guess the response to his reaction was really, what came out was really the intent of the whole training, which is to let white people know that they need to accept the fact that they're racist. And then I don't know what they're trying to achieve with that, but really it is a strategy of division. Now, why are we talking about this here at our show?
That's a good question.
It is a good question, because I am just, as an educator, I'm and a parent, and I'm always thinking, if a principal, someone who had authority in the school he was teaching, if he can feel this powerless about disagreeing about something that was said during a presentation, think about how teachers feel, and then think about how the children feel that have different thoughts and ideas, and I would like to share that.
Yeah. What we're being taught in society, in every aspect of it, is learned helplessness. It is a natural instinct for people to defend themselves, to defend their family, to defend what their beliefs and values are. And what we are seeing right across the board, and it doesn't matter what sector you're talking about, in medicine, in education, in finance, in the judicial system, politics, is that you don't have anything to say. I mean, look what the trainer said. Your job as a white person is to accept the fact that Canada is a racist country, which is absolute bollocks. To say that we are more racist than the United States is ridiculous. Has Canada had racism issues? Sure.
Every country has that when you have different cultures come in, because it is difficult to understand another culture that is completely foreign to you. And when you have different values. But Canada has never been known for a country that has a major racism problem. And I can attest to that because I did my teacher certification in New York State. in the United States. And I did take a course to obviously obtain my certification called Cultural Foundations in Education. And so I was given a packet that was prepared by my professor of articles about, I guess, social studies of the student population. And as I was reading through this, all these research articles, I kept on seeing things like the white, the Black, Hispanic students, and occasionally the Asian students. And so there were about 3 of us who were Canadians in that program. And so we had gone home. We read through this booklet. And then we went back to class because our professor said we were going to discuss that. And all of us who are Canadian students, we were really wondering why did we have to read these articles, because we felt like this was a historic thing. We said, are these articles historic? Is this talking about how education was viewed here in the United States in the past, or is the view still the same? And I have to tell you that a lot of the students in my class said, no, this is how education still functions in the United States. We look at students by their racial grouping. And above that, some of the students, so now that's people who are studying to become teachers in the schools in New York State. They said, I come from a lower socioeconomic class. And so my mom was a secretary, my dad was a factory worker. And so when I was in school, I thought, I was asked what I would like to be. And so when I said, this teacher said that I want to be a doctor, the teacher said to me, well, maybe we should strive to be more like your mom and dad. Maybe you should be more like your mom and aim for being a secretary, administrator, somebody in a similar position. So a lot of those soon-to-be teachers told me that they were really asked to stay in the socioeconomic, to have goals to keep in the same socioeconomic place where their family was, and then racially as well. So for me to be such a shock, that means that I never saw this in Canada in terms of an issue. I never saw this division of the different races. And when I became a teacher, I taught the book Underground Railroad to Canada, where the slaves from the South were coming to Canada to find safety. So if we have a racial issue in Canada, that's a recent issue. That is not a historic issue. And so anybody who has studied the history of Canada would know that the statements that were claimed during that training session are not true. Now, are there issues between different ethnic groups? Absolutely. That's all over the world. But that is not the predominant culture of Canada. And so this is a recent thing.
Well, the whole idea of critical race theory is something that's fairly recent. I mean, it was a document that was produced by some pointy-headed professor, or I don't even know what she was, but
no, a trainer. That wasn't even a professor. It was a trainer.
Who developed the critical race theory?
Oh, sorry, the professor. Sorry, no, I thought you were talking about
the
trainer.
No, and it's like the 1619 document that states that the United States was actually founded on racist principles and stuff like that, and it's a technique that the globalists have used effectively for many, many years, all throughout history, as a matter of fact. And it's something that's called wedge politics. And what you do is that in order to maintain power, what you have to do is you have to divide people.
Yeah.
And biblically, Yeshua, Jesus, he says in the Gospels that a house divided against itself cannot stand.
Mhm.
If you have division in a house, and I actually have a book that's called A House Divided based on that scripture
Yes.
regarding the U.S. Civil War.
Mhm.
And the United States almost fell as a country because it was a divided place. I mean, it essentially split into two countries. And we've seen that happen throughout history with the Czech Republic and Slovakia. We've seen Yugoslavia, but
Yes, split
those
into republics.
well,
Yes.
yeah, but those were more artificial constructs that were kind of jammed together with people who had no business being together.
Yeah, so they were separate peoples to begin with. They were put together, and then, I mean, I come from the Balkans. There's always tension there.
Sure.
And see, when I teach history to children, I just point out to them the main factors in history are the desire for land, for riches and resources,
Mm-hmm.
and for control and power. These are the three really main motivators of why a lot of things in history happened. And so we are seeing now in Western society, I mean, that a lot of people, and see what's happened is a lot of people have come from different parts of the world because this was the place where you could find this acceptance and you could be free.
Mm-hmm.
People coming from Europe, I mean, most of the inhabitants, the early inhabitants in Canada, after the Aboriginal people that came, it was the Europeans.
Yeah.
And they came here because they were looking for freedom.
Yeah.
And they weren't looking for any racial.
No, I mean, there were issues
division.
with the natives, of course, because it was basically a land grab. But other than that, Canada does not have a history of racist politics like the United States does. The United States, that was what the globalists have always used in the U.S. in order to divide. Now, Canada, it's been more of a cultural thing. It's a language thing where we have division between the French and the English. But you can't really tell the difference until people start speaking. It's not as if you can identify someone across the road and say, well, that person's French or that person's English. So, but again, it comes back to this wedge politics thing that everybody is pitted against each other, because if you have people who are divided, then outside forces can come in and control it. Whereas if people are united, then it's much more difficult to exert power because everybody is fighting the same battle. And, we've heard the expression, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So people will band together to fight a common cause, even if they're not necessarily united in practice. But what we have going on, and this whole diversity stuff, and this whole critical race theory, and this whole, whites are bad. Listen, I'm not going to feel guilty about the color of my skin, because when you think about it, our skin color is different.
Yes,
Okay.
I tan more than you.
You actually
I have
got
more melatonin than you.
You actually got this thing called pigmentation.
Yes.
I don't know where you can get it. Maybe Amazon carries it or something like that. But I go immediately from white to red. There's no intermediary. You go out in the sun for 10 minutes, you got a tan for 6 months. And I'm not bitter.
As we're discussing this, I'm thinking, how does that make us better or worse people? How does that, I mean, you have to, again, just like we spoke last week, you have to ignore science completely in order for you to believe that certain skin color or facial features or body features or whatever make you a higher or lower being or somebody worthwhile being friends with or not. So I actually, coming to Canada, I was so excited because in Eastern Europe, again, under communism, the borders were closed.
Right.
We were not allowed to go out and meet different cultures and different have different experiences. And so once we came to Canada, I just felt like it was the best thing in the world to have all these countries and all these cultures being represented in one place. And just, I'm talking about Toronto, Canada. There's little sections, and you can go eat the food of different countries. You can experience the culture. I mean, it was just so wonderful. And there's never been issues with that. If ever there is an issue, it's more of a crime issue, but that is not a racial thing. That's
a culture issue.
It's a mindset issue.
That is, and listen, again, you can go up the chain to see how it's been used against us. But what we're trying to say is that here this poor man felt like he had no other options but to take his life, because not only was this presenter, who is just an abominable individual, just a horrible human being,
somebody who was teaching inclusion was being very discriminatory. I mean, let's call it for what it is.
It's amazing how that works.
It's like when I had a friend of mine from high school, when I became a believer in God, and then I adopted the Messianic way of thinking and lifestyle. She asked me, well, what's Messianic? And I explained that, we believe in God of the Bible, and there's only one God. And so this former friend of mine proceeded to tell me that she does not accept religions that are exclusive, because they believe in only one God, and we don't believe in more than that. And so she told me that she cannot be friends with me because I have exclusive beliefs. Well,
so you were being excluded
from her friendship circle because I have exclusive beliefs. I was going to be perfectly fine continuing being friends, though we have different religious beliefs. So we just have to see the actions of the people, because there's big words like I'm inclusive, but if someone excludes you from something, they're not inclusive.
Not at all. And so, here this guy is, he feels he has no other option but to take his own life, because not only was the presenter of this program, this indoctrination thing, bullying him, but his own employer turned against him.
He was not being defended.
No, he was being attacked.
He was being attacked. And this is, I'm just kind of going to bring in the unions here. They're here to supposedly to protect the rights and well-being of their members. And where was his union? Where was those who were supposed to defend him? So
I think they paid lip service. It sounds like they made some sort of half-hearted effort, but the reality is that, I mean, unlike what's going on with like the actors' strike or the writers' strike, and then Fran Drescher, the poverty-stricken multimillionaire actress, is sitting there railing about the greedy studio heads, and how all of these actors have now walked out in unison and in solidarity with the writers. Where was the teachers union? Where was the organizations that backed this guy up?
So Terrible. again, there are lots of things being taught and promoted, but really, just like the Bible says, you judge them by their fruit, by their actions. From a young child, I learned that people can tell me they love me, but if they don't spend any time with me, or they don't do anything with me, then how am I to believe that they love me? So again, it is time for us to look at the words versus the actions of the people.
So what we wanted to discuss tonight was, we wanted to share about this tragic story, but it's to highlight what's really going on in the school systems, and why, again, we emphasize you must take your kids out of public school. And this has been going on in the United States for a while now. Charlie McCarthy Trudeau, who is nothing more than Klaus Schwab's sock puppet, is just simply mouthing whatever agenda the World Economic Forum puts forward. But what's happening in the schools is directly affecting your children. Our neighbor has a biracial daughter.
Yes.
And what was it that she told you?
So yeah, there's a mom next door, and she said to me that her daughter never knew anything about racism, though. Yeah, so dad's black, mom's white, and so this girl never even knew, like never even understood. I mean, to her that was a natural part of life. Her family is made of different diversity. And she said one day the school decided to teach them about racism, and they showed them this video of some girl being racist and what they were saying. And she said her daughter, for her daughter, this was the first time she heard anything like that. And not only that, but she felt that some of the kids, through that training and the video that were shown, now were given words to speak. The narrative of racism now was being put into the school where it did not exist before. And that's what the mom said to me. And she said, my daughter never, ever knew about that. And now her friends knew how to speak to one another. And now racism was introduced through that training, anti-racism training.
So what we have allowed to happen is for the crazies to take over the education system. And our kids are now being taught that based on the color of your skin, you should feel badly. Well, listen, it wasn't anybody's choice to come out of the womb the way that they look.
A certain skin color, yeah.
Skin color, eye color, hair color. We could start persecuting people because someone's got straight hair, someone's got curly hair.
Well, I mean, your family is Jewish. There was racial war on the Jewish people at some point in history.
Mm-hmm.
So your people were slaves in Egypt all these years ago. So yes, has racism been an issue throughout history? Yes. Have people found a way to overcome that? Yes. Because...
Well, listen, what it comes down to is that there is no such thing as racism because there's only one race. It's the human race.
It's the human race.
We all have the same body parts. We all have two eyes. We all have two ears. Some people's actually work. We all have two arms and two legs. We all are essentially the same. The only thing that is different is minor variations. Eye color, hair color,
but you and
skin
I are
tone.
Focusing on physical things, and this person that was training this course was saying that because of your physical attributes, now you have to have certain place in society. That's when racism comes in, not because you acknowledge somebody's physical differences,
of course,
but because you now socially put them in a different status.
Yes, because then, and at one time it was the whites that had the issue with the blacks.
The white people did not treat black people when they decided to have slavery in the southern United States. Absolutely.
And we had that in Britain beforehand, and the Democratic Party founded the KKK in order to foster this whole racism thing. We watched a movie a couple of years ago. It was the Green Book, regarding Dr. Don Shirley, who was the black pianist, and took a tour through the Deep South in the tremendous movie. Viggo Mortensen was in it, who played his driver, and really showed you what it was like. But I mean, you can watch movies like Mississippi Burning, and it has been an issue in the United States, but that's only because the political parties and the people who run those parties continue to foster that.
Have been utilizing this issue. Just before we continue, because I know what we're going to go on, and which is the victim mentality, which comes as a result of certain group of people being mistreated. But another issue, so we've kind of addressed in the United States what has been historic issue. In Canada, so there was an article that I found that a teacher of 40 years with a master's degree in history of education and doctorate in philosophy of education with a specialty in Indigenous history was fired by the Abbotsford School District. His crime was to tell grade 12 students in Abbotsford, British Columbia, that most children of Indian residential schools die from tuberculosis and other diseases. Okay. Psychologist Jordan Peterson has been threatened with a re-education program at a College of Psychologists of Ontario for a number of tweets, including some criticizing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. So we're seeing systematic, really loss of freedom of speech.
Mm-hmm.
And so this article was also about a teacher who came to the attention of the disciplinarians after she wrote a post on a private Facebook page for teachers and who was teaching in Barrie, Ontario, and wrote, "Kids aren't in school to be indoctrinated with critical race theory. School should be non-partisan. Focus on modeling kindness to everyone and speak out against any form of discrimination you see. This includes the anti-racist movements. For example, all white people are racist." So this was a teacher who spoke in a private teacher Facebook group, that her view was that that should not be really something that should be focused on in schools, and instead kindness and treating others well should be the value taught in school. Because just like my neighbor said, until that anti-racist training was brought into the school, her daughter knew nothing about it.
You see, and it's everything that they say is doublespeak. What they call anti-racist training is actually fostering the idea of racism.
Gives the children the lines to speak when they decide to come against another student. And listen, children don't need help.
No.
To come because they're pushing their boundaries, they're growing. There's just like the Europeans who came to North America and wanted to take land and wanted to rule over the people that are here. That's the same thing happens in the schoolyard.
Oh yeah.
And when I was actually teaching history this past school year in my pod, I had the kids do trappers and traders game, and there were certain rules. So they had different resources that I kind of scattered around, and they couldn't find something until they had gotten. There was rules, and one of the students had a strategy. The other ones were just kind of and they started getting upset at that student because he was getting the most of the resources, and then they wanted to trade with him. He said no, because he felt like he was in a good position.
Mm-hmm.
I have all the resources I need. You guys need me now. So this is what happens in the schoolyard. This is what happens in the world, in the political scene. Children don't need any help. They need to be taught to go against that human nature that the Bible speaks about, that selfish nature, and to esteem others above oneself. Where is that teaching in the schools?
Mm-hmm.
So not only is there teaching that some people are lower because by their skin color they're racist, where's the kindness? Where's esteeming the other person higher than yourself? I mean, that is completely lost.
That's Philippians 2:3. And then if you were to take that train of thought, a guy like Dr. Ben Carson would have never gotten to where he was, and he grew up in poverty. His mother had like a grade 3 education, but she insisted that, number one, he doesn't buy into all the racist mumbo jumbo and the fact that blacks should be victims. And number two, that he had to work his tail off. And you know what? This guy ended up becoming a neurosurgeon.
It's about how hard you work and just the moral system that you keep. It has got nothing to do with your skin color.
No.
Now, is it sometimes harder if there is an issue in an area? Yes, absolutely it is. But I have students with disabilities that have to work harder to overcome their disabilities. I have students with all kinds of things that, like there's just some things that are not fair in life.
Well, I mean, that class that you had of the Afghan kids, and what happened when they started doing presentations.
Yes, I was teaching ESL science class in a high school in Toronto, and I had the students do presentations, and there were two kids from Afghanistan, and one started complaining that they don't understand the other kid's presentation because they had too thick of an accent. I mean, sometimes you just, you laugh about that. But no, what we're trying to say is that when the moment we say there's a big problem, are we creating a bigger problem? Are we finding a solution to that? Is telling someone you're racist the solution to the problem?
No, of course not. What it's trying to do is create guilt, and it's trying to create learned helplessness, that every time I wake up in the morning and I look in the mirror, I look at my arm and say, oh, geez, I got to feel guilty because somehow or another, magically overnight, without my even knowing it, I became an oppressor of people 200 years ago.
So, and just like this teacher said in her Facebook post, it's the moral system and the moral values that really are important about a person. It's what's on the inside that is important, not on what's on the outside, because you can change that nowadays. Well, that's another topic. Let's not even go there.
No.
So just to finish this story about this teacher, so a complaint was also made to the Ontario College of Teachers. Actually, first of all, following the post, a fellow teacher filed a complaint, and shortly afterward, so that was in March 2021, the school board suspended her for a week without a pay, and she is still fighting that suspension. So she said, we should not be teaching critical race theory. We should be teaching kindness. Her fellow teacher complained, and she was suspended based on that complaint. I mean, how is that different from the principal who was taken the position, whose position was taken from him? And then a complaint was also made to the Ontario College of Teachers, which launched an investigation in March of 2022. So that's a year later, after that person was suspended temporarily, when finally an investigation was launched. A finding of guilt by the college would have threatened the teacher's license. However, in February, the college decided to caution this teacher rather than suspending her. So the college found nothing wrong in what she did.
Right.
They just cautioned her, be careful what you say. But what does that mean? Did she do something wrong, or didn't she do something wrong?
It was the same thing that happened to you.
Well, I know. Yeah, and that has nothing to do with racial issues.
No, but the point is that you were falsely accused of something. You were exonerated, but there were no consequences for
the person who falsely accused me. And just like that teacher, I was suspended and investigated until I was cleared, and I was asked to return back to work. But I was asked to show up to a meeting to make sure that things like that don't happen in the future. And I'm like, well, what things like that? Like me being falsely accused, it's and if there's no consequence to the person who lies and accuses falsely, then you can caution me all you want.
Yeah.
I'm not the problem.
But what is this doing? What is this doing to children? Mm-hmm. Again, it is creating a wedge. It is creating division and pitting people against each other. Because what everybody likes to call the elites, the globalists, the people who hold the levers of power in the world, as long as they can have us fighting against each other, we're not paying attention to what they're doing, which is systematically taking away our freedoms.
I don't think any of us should really be living. So.
Well, no, Yuval Harari thinks that we're hackable humans, or hackable animals, rather.
We're not even humans.
We're not even human, but he's going to be a god. That little...
Yes. family show.
Yes.
So and again, we have to, and that's the thing, the Bible also cautions us not to be proud, not to because the one who thinks of himself more than he ought, then he fools.
He deceives himself.
He deceives himself.
If you think you're something and you're not, you're deceived.
So anytime, the Bible says, anytime we think we're better than someone else, we deceive ourselves. That is not the truth.
Yeah. See, according to Paul in Galatians 3:28, it says, in Messiah, so standing before God, there's neither male nor female, there's neither bond nor free, there's neither Jew or Gentile. So
before
racial,
God, we answer the same.
Racial, gender, status, it doesn't matter. Everybody is equal before God.
Again, it's what's the morals, values on the inside, the thinking in our mind, the values inside is what counts, not what's on the outside.
So the point is that we need to fight back against this, because what has happened is that those people that dictate policy and have taken over the education system, and it comes from our politicians, but then it comes from even above them and who controls the politicians, is they say, pit them against each other, have them fight against each other. So instead of fighting against each other, what do we need to do? We need to fight back against that and see what should have happened with Richard Bilsko is that the people who didn't agree with this should have all rallied around him and come to his support. You see, we have to fight back against those people that do this to us. We have to fight back, because what they're creating in us is what? Learned victimhood. They're creating professional victims. We have to fight back against this victimhood and this false doctrine here that we have to fight back against all this, because it's a lie. It's not true. What he was accused of is not true. And until we take a stand against untruth, we are participants in it. Okay? If we the rock band Rush, they had a song that said that if we choose not to decide, we still have made a choice.
Right. There's another quote that goes around a lot. In order for evil to succeed,
all it takes is for good men
to do nothing. And this is another thing we need to really look at. Yes, are there issues in society? Absolutely, there are issues in society. But then we need to look at, do the solutions that our politicians or institutions offer, do they make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, again, from my experience as a student teacher in the U.S., at the time when I was doing my education, that's when No Child Left Behind had come in. It was a brand new initiative. And so everybody recognized that there's an issue. There wasn't adequate support for students with special needs. And so what was decided is that in order for students with special needs to feel more normal, or so they don't feel that they have some kind of disability, some kind of different ability than the children in school, they're just going to be incorporated in the regular classroom so that they could have a full experience of a regular child without whatever different abilities that they would have. Well, that makes no sense. And now we are actually, because here in Canada, we have kind of followed that. Now we're having issues because what happened is children who have special needs and they need specialized teachers, they need to be in specialized classrooms. And so now the support for special needs students has completely, not completely, but it's so little now that the teachers now are not able to teach a class of students who don't have those special needs. There's disruptions everywhere. Those students, instead of feeling like they're no different than the other kids, that actually became highlighted to them, how they're different, they have different abilities.
Well, we had that situation with the pod that you taught. we brought in an autistic kid, and it caused all kinds of issues.
Well, right. So she functioned differently. She needed a different type of activities. But now if I had changed my pod to accommodate her, then the other kids.
Well, I'm talking about even the one back in the fall too, the other one.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So this child became violent because, anyway, there were just all kinds of issues happening. So children, and this is why we want to customize our pods, because children need to be taught the way they learn. And so this No Child Left Behind actually backfired and created chaos in the schools.
And it wasn't a new policy. It's just been rebranded with every single president because it's communist. What it is saying that everybody is forced equal, whether you like it or not. Under Obama, it was Common Core, and under Bill Clinton, it was something different.
People who work in schools, they will tell you we need more specialists and more resources for the kids with special needs. We're probably going to talk in another show of the rise of autism in schools and mental health issues and all that. This is a completely different show.
Yeah.
But the point I'm trying to make is that, okay, we all recognize there's an issue.
Yes.
But then the solution that was offered made the issue worse. And so we need to be critically thinking people. And that's one thing that parents say, that critical thinking, not critical race theory, critical thinking is what needs to be taught in schools.
The purpose of education is to teach children how to think, not what to think.
Yes.
But what we have, and as we are seeing with this story with Richard Biltzko, is that not only is it the children, but they have to indoctrinate the teachers and they have to indoctrinate the administrators above them so that this can be passed down. And woe be unto you if you oppose the official narrative.
Well, and I have to tell you that when I left the public school system, it was because of that. I knew that nobody was covering my back when somebody would come against me. If a student comes against me or another colleague or anyone comes, I knew that I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel safe in the schools. And then we ended up sending our son to public school in kindergarten. And he didn't thrive really. And then I thought to myself, wait a minute, I left that public school system because I didn't feel safe. What am I doing? Yeah. Why am I sending my child in that system where I, as an adult who knows how to protect myself more than my kindergarten child, felt unsafe?
Well, the clincher for us was the radical sex ed curriculum that came in 2015. Right,
which completely, the parents were not asked at all.
Well, no, because
about that.
It was commissioned by a radical gender ideologist in Premier Kathleen Wynne, who is a practicing lesbian. But
she could practice whatever she wants. But then the person that was asked to write that curriculum
was a convicted pedophile. This guy was caught with all kinds of child porn and stuff like that. And he's the one that designed the sex ed curriculum. So what does that tell you about what the agenda was? It is to sexualize our children. And it continues to go today. So when
we mentioned that, yes, this sex ed curriculum, after this person was convicted,
they still didn't pull it.
The curriculum wasn't pulled out of schools. Problem, solution.
Yeah. So what does that tell you about what the objective of the curriculum was? It is to groom the children.
And what is that? This objective is still being continued today because that curriculum was never pulled out.
Now it's been enhanced.
Well, now we have, modified and enhanced it, but the foundation is still there.
Yes.
And so that's leading to a lot of mental health issues, children questioning things.
Well, now you've got all kinds of lawsuits of kids suing the hospitals and the doctors and the pharmaceutical firms for allowing them to go through gender transition surgery instead of just giving them psychological counseling. Kids were confused. And there was this one kid who said that he was just confused. And so instead, what happened was he got the surgery. You can't go back from that.
And I know that here in Ontario, a lot of parents are really upset about the fact that They're not allowed to speak in school board meetings.
That's right.
They're not allowed to voice any opinion different than what the school board has told the teachers to teach in schools. Actually, I just recently listened to a recording in a school, a teacher, after the Pride Day, like the first day in June,
right,
when Pride Month was introduced in the schools. I know that some, I know Muslim families for sure, but a lot of families really.
No, it was like 80% of the school stayed home, or the class anyway.
A lot of students stay home, and again, it doesn't even like, I don't think it was specific race or specific religion or specific culture. It's just it was parents who asked their children to stay home, and there was a recording of this teacher shaming them the day after that they
just berating them.
And that was an elementary school. That wasn't even, well, I don't know, or maybe it was a high school. I don't know, but it was a school. Like, just the fact that a teacher could shame students. I mean, how is that a good teaching practice?
Yeah.
So
over not accepting something that they're fundamentally opposed to.
So what it is, though, she was told, your parents are wrong and you need to go back to your parents now. My father was a racist, she said. I changed his mind. And now you need to go to your parents and tell them they're wrong. What is this teacher telling the kids? Your parents are wrong. Don't listen to your parents. As a matter of fact, go tell them what they should believe.
Wedge politics, wedge indoctrination. Yeah. It is pitting children, is pitting families against each other. It is pitting neighbors against each other.
The issue is that that day had to happen, and parents' values were not at all respected. No. For such a big percentage of the school to be away for that day, that tells you something. But then again, we had a trucker convoy come to Ottawa trying to voice something to our prime minister, and he wouldn't talk to them.
And he brought in a bunch of international thugs in order to beat the protesters.
Yeah, no, they were all.
So politicians aren't listening. So what does that tell you? What we have to do? We have to fight back against the system. We have to make sure that we are not allowing. Oh, you want that one? Okay,
that's mine. And all right. Hold on. How did that work?
Okay.
So we tried to have fun because it is a serious topic. Oh. All right, hold on.
So, come on.
I have to learn how to fight.
Yes.
Where was it?
We're going to teach you how to fight.
Well, I have to learn it myself.
Here.
Oh, okay. There you go.
All right. See, this is what you have to do. You have to fight back against tyranny. You have to fight back against indoctrination. And how do you do that? You just simply remove your children from the education system.
You don't fight with people. You fight with ideology.
Yes.
We're
not to war against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, and rulers of darkness, of spiritual forces of wickedness in high places. It is the spirits behind them, and this is a spiritual battle. It's unquestionable, because when you look at what's going on, it's absolute insanity.
So I just wanted to, we have a few minutes until the end of the show. I just wanted to address, how do we fight? Because, I mean, we kind of make fun of this and make light a little bit, but last night we watched the show. Mm-hmm. It was a judge working with young offenders. And there was one court case where a girl was having behavior issues because she had emotional instability. Mm-hmm. So she needed medication to help her kind of balance her emotion and her thinking. And her father was in the court. And so the judge asked this young girl, are you taking your medication? She said, no, my father thinks they're too expensive. Then that judge turned around and said to the father, well, do you smoke? No, I don't. Do you drink? Well, sometimes. Okay, well, you have to think about this. There's just some things you don't need to eat or indulge in and spend money for your daughter. And if that's still not enough, get a second job. Do you want your daughter to end up in the criminal system? Or do you want to keep your daughter? How badly do you want it?
Exactly.
So fighting back, what this fighting back means, we need to do something. We need to sacrifice things. We need to get rid of some indulgencies so that our children can be taken care of and what they need.
Why is this? Because we're getting a lot of people who are coming to us about pods and saying, well, I can't afford it. And really, when you look at what the tuition is for our pods, It is
It's half of what
it's half of what a private
school
school would be. But we still have to pay a teacher. We still have administrative costs and everything else. But what the people aren't understanding is they're thinking, I want what I want for free. And the days of free education, the days of free faith are over.
Well, even public education is not free. Your tax money goes towards either public or Catholic school board here in Canada.
Yeah.
And now I know there are people who are now circulating a petition that it gives the right to the parents to decide where their money is going to go for education. So that's one of the things we can do, sign petitions.
And by the way, you can email us at info@schoolpodscanada.com if you want a copy of that.
Because it has to be
petition.
signatures,
Hand signatures. So we'll email it to you. You can print it off and you can send it back to us. So
that's one way. But another way is we have to really look at what is the most important thing. What do we need to invest in right now? And I believe that us sacrificing is worthwhile our child's future. Because remember, this is our purpose of our life, to build the next generation, to train up a child the way he should go, and when he's older he will not depart.
If we don't give them the right training now, we're going to destroy the next generation.
But then they're going to teach their children, and we have to leave a legacy, and now is the time to leave a legacy.
We are out of time.
All right.
So we thank everybody for joining us tonight, and we'll look forward to seeing you next Tuesday for another episode of Smarten Up Biblical Education Principles. Have a great night. Have a great week. We'll see you soon.
See you next week.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.